If you're looking for a precision rifle scope for long-range shooting, possibly long-range hunting, or getting involved in the competitive shooting circles, such as NRL 22 or extended rimfire shootings, then you are looking for a front focal plane rifle scope, and you might be on a budget looking at that $400 to $500 price point. The latest entry into that category is this scope, the Bushnell Match Pro. This has been a long-awaited scope. I was really excited for this because it comes from Bushnell, and Bushnell is one of those companies that generally will provide a good value and stand behind the product. The box is a little bit different. It's simply pure cardboard. There's nothing fancy in it, and I think it actually works quite well for this. That if you're going to recycle it, it's much easier to use this. There's no styrofoam or anything else to get rid of. So the scope is, let's put this here. Okay. So the scope is a 6 to 24 by 50, meaning you have a magnification range from 6 to 24, and you have a 50mm front objective. This scope uses a 30mm tube, not one of the larger 34mm tubes. So this would be something similar to the Element Helix and the Bushnell R225, which I've also done videos on. So what's going to separate this scope from a lot of the competition is that it's going to come with pretty much every feature that you are going to use. So let's start on the back and work our way forward. So on the back, you have a fast focus eyepiece, and there is a rubber coating around the edge which is going to help you grip the eyepiece. So this is going to be the first thing that you're going to set when you're setting behind the gun, and the reason for that is because this is what's going to help set the eyepiece in focus to the reticle. You want to make sure that that focus is correct before you make any adjustments to the parallax settings. One of the reasons why one of the sure signs that you need to adjust your eye parallax is that if you wear glasses, you're nearsighted and farsighted, you will need to set this. Do keep in mind also that if you wear glasses and then you take glasses off in order to shoot for a scope, you will have to set the fast focus eyepiece. Once you set it, there's no lock on here, but it is not going to move in place. So the magnification range, as we discussed, is 6 to 24. It is nice and smooth, and there's no hangups, and it is consistent from edge to edge. Do note that you also have this little shark fin here, which is going to help you grab it, although it is not going to be as big as having a larger throw lever. So if that's something that you're looking for, you'll definitely want to consider that. If you're target shooting, if you're using this for hunting, probably not. The reason why is because that's going to be one extra thing that can snag on your clothes or your sling. So moving forward, once again, 30mm one-piece tube, and then you have your elevation, your windage adjustment, and then your parallax and illumination settings. Alright, so let's start with the elevation and windage adjustment. One of the things that you're going to get here, and you'll see you're not going to be able to make any moves until you pull up the scope caps. These have a locking feature on them, and this is actually a very positive lock. So what the lock is useful for is if you're going to make any adjustments, let's say you zero your scope in, or you're going to be shooting at one distance for a long time, you just make your adjustment and then you can lock it down. At that point, you're not going to be able to make any changes to the windage or elevation. And once again, you do have this locking feature on both windage and elevation. The other nice feature about the scope is that these are also toolless scope caps, meaning you don't need any tools in order to re-zero this. So what you would do is you'd mount this to your rifle, you'd set your fast focus, and then you would get it sighted in by making the windage and elevation adjustments. When you do, you'd obviously want to zero it. So you would unscrew this top cap, okay, and then you can lift the turret. You would align it back to 0. Okay. Press it down and then screw it down, and you now have it zeroed. it works the exact same way on the windage adjustment. So from here, if basically you know now the scope is zeroed for 100 yards, and then you're going out to shoot at 500, and let's say that's 3 mils, you can just dial it in, and your 3 mils or whatever you need to, and then you can dial it down, or then you can go back to 0. Do note, there is no 0 stop on here as you find on some rifle scopes. However, you do have the locking scope caps, so if you don't want to make any adjustments, just keep it right back at 0. So on the scope, you have 18 mils of internal elevation adjustment, and that is possibly one place where it does give up a little bit to the competition. Even still, 18 mils is definitely going to be able to get you out past 1,000 yards, and with some calibers, probably even out to a mile if you have a 20 MOA base and you're able to use most of the 18 mils of internal elevation adjustment. At that point though, you do have other things to consider, namely would you be able to see the targets and the clarity of the glass. That's a different story. So on the us side, you do have your parallax adjustment, and the parallax adjustment is nice and smooth. You do have some beveling on here. Some of these are a little bit higher raised. It's actually quite nice. Very grippy without being super duper aggressive. One of the things that's going to set this scope apart, and one of the reasons why it's recommended for rimfire shooting, is that you can adjust your parallax down to as little as 10 yards. So in a different video, we're looking at a 6 scope, but that had a minimum of 50 yard parallax. Here, it's a minimum of 10 yards, making this ideal for, let's say, rimfire shooting. So you can go from 10 yards all the way out to infinity, and once again, this is very nice and smooth throughout the entire dial. The other thing you have with the scope is that you do have an illuminated reticle, something that you definitely don't get with a lot of scopes at this price point. The one thing I really like about this one, so never mind the fact that most of the scopes at this price point are not going to come with illuminated reticle, but here, even though you only have 6 illumination levels, Bushnell put in an on-off, on-off in between each dial. So let's say, for example, you're on 3 and you want to turn it off, you can just hit up or down and it's going to turn it off. Whereas with some scopes, they might have more illumination settings. But let's say, for example, if you're at 4 or 5, you might need to go all the way up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 off, or go back the other way in order to turn it off. So having it on, off, definitely do appreciate that. The reticle is not bad. It is actually pretty good. It is a Christmas tree style reticle, and I'll put a picture of it here so you could take a look at it as well. It is going to be actually quite useful on the lower end, so if you're on 6 magnification, it's going to be useful. That does, however, mean that at full magnification, it is going to be a little bit bigger. Now, because this is only a 4-time magnification range, it's not that big of an issue as it is, let's say, for example, with scopes that have a 5, 6, or 7, or an 8-time erector in it. And in those cases, you either have to make the determination, do you want to have the reticle be usable at the low end, which means it's super thick on the high end, or usable in the high end, which means on the low end it's completely basically useless. So with a 4-time erector for 4-time magnification range, it is actually quite useful on all sides, and I actually do like the reticle on here. However, it definitely is personal preference. So bottom line on the scope, this is a very feature-packed scope. What you're giving up a little bit is, so these turrets are nice, very audible, very tactile, fairly precise. You are giving up that there is no 0 stop on here. And again, the turrets they're not bad. They could be a little bit better, but it could definitely be a lot worse. The other thing you're giving up is going to be the image quality on the high end. So they did pack a bunch of features into it, but the image quality, it's not going to be as good as scopes, let's say, for example, like the Vortex Venom, or scopes that are going to be meaningfully more expensive. So if you're buying this, if you're going to be shooting out to 5, 7, 8, even possibly 1,000 yards, you'll definitely be able to see the targets, and it is going to be good. However, if you ultimately want to go beyond that, or you're going to be spending more time on the higher magnification range than lower, I would possibly look at spending a bit more money and getting some of the higher end Bushnell scopes. Otherwise, if your budget's $500 and you're looking for something for rimfire, and you're looking for something from a good brand name, this is going to be a good way to go. So that is the Bushnell Match Pro.